Mockery from the stars. They arrived in silver spires that floated without engines, gravity defying their geometry. The Thalzari Empire, lords of 1,000 systems, masters of war, science, and psionics, descended upon Earth not with war, but with laughter. We expected warriors. One emissary chuckled, his voice like glass breaking in syrup. Instead, we found insects pretending to be stars. The United Nations collapsed within days. Earth's militaries, fractured and outdated, didn't stand chance. With a flick of thought, the Thalzari levitated tanks and dropped them on their own cities. They turned nuclear missiles into harmless clouds of ash mid-flight. When resistance finally fell silent, Earth was carved up like a corpse. Cities became labor hubs. Continents were strip-mined for rare minerals. Humans, bipeds of marginal value, were harvested by the millions and dispersed throughout the galaxy. The Thalzari had a name for our people in their language, Garashi, which loosely translated to the tolerated pests. Commander Juno Reyes was born in the slave barracks of Tau 5, a sulfur-choked mining colony orbiting a dying red sun. She didn't know the smell of grass, only the hiss of exhaust vents and the taste of rationed air. Her earliest memory was her father, a gaunt man with fire in his eyes, whispering to her at night. Earth was ours once. We reach for the stars on our own terms. Don't let them erase that. He was executed when she was 9, accused of spreading insurrectionist nostalgia. They made her watch. The Thalzari thought fear would teach obedience. They forgot what fear breeds in humans, defiance. Years passed. She rose through the hidden ranks of the resistance, trained in secret bunkers carved beneath mining shafts. Humans weren't allowed weapons, so they made tools into blades, data cores into bombs. The Thalzari never suspected the cargo ships they allowed humans to pilot were being mapped, reverse-engineered, and sabotaged. The tipping point came when a stolen fragment of Earth's pre-conquest AI core was recovered on a black market trade route. It contained designs for cloaking systems the Empire still didn't understand. Earth hadn't been as backward as it seemed. It had been preparing. Juno stood before a crowd of grim-faced rebels in the darkness of a coolant tunnel. Above them, the stars pulsed with indifference. In her hand was a transmitter, short-range, untraceable, ancient Terran tech. She pressed the button. Across hundreds of scattered colonies, a hidden signal awoke. Varied caches of Earth-born tech flickered back to life. In deep space, long-dormant satellites activated. Somewhere in the Kuiper Belt, old warships shuddered and turned toward the core systems. Her voice, calm and cold, echoed across the void. This is Commander Juno Reyes. Earth remembers. Earth endures. To all human hands still bound, we rise tonight. No throne will stand when we're done. The Empire had laughed. It wouldn't be laughing for long. The fire beneath the ashes. The signal spread like wildfire through the shadows. On the shattered prison world of Virex 7, a blind mechanic tapped out a rebel code on a stolen console. On the frozen rigs of Belthane Drift, a girl no older than 12 smuggled fusion cells to rebels beneath the mines. And in the dust-choked tunnels of Tau 5, Juno Reyes began building an army from broken men and forgotten women. They had no fleets, no battalions, no planetary strongholds. What they had was desperation, fury, and Earth-born ingenuity. Dr. Malik Vorn arrived in a hijacked freighter days after the signal. He was gaunt, his gray beard streaked with soot, and his eyes burned with the same fire Juno had seen in her father's. "I smuggled this out of Europa," he whispered, pulling a cue from a lead-line case. It pulsed with a dim blue glow. Project Obsidian. Pre-conquest AI architecture. It learned from us during the old wars. Juno stared at it, stunned. "I thought all Earth AI was dismantled." "Only the ones they found," Malik said, smiling. This one waited. The AI, once activated, scanned local space in silence. Then it spoke with a neutral, distinctly Terran voice. "Directive, deceive, disrupt, destroy. Begin reclamation protocol, Earthfire." From that moment, the resistance evolved. Obsidian taught them to hijack Thalzari gravity lanes and inject false sensor echoes. It rewired slave collars to feed enemy intel directly into the Resistance's network. It mapped ship designs from memory and gave Juno a single strategic doctrine: never fight fair. Strike teams began hitting targets across the outer sectors. A mining administrator's shuttle exploded in orbit. A weapons depot on Kralos was swallowed by its own fusion core. On the commerce hub of Vendrax, an entire Thalzari command post was ejected into space by their own security system. The Empire dismissed the attacks as petty uprisings. They deployed standard suppression units, psychic enforcers, drone clouds, neural disruptors. And they failed. The Thalzari didn't understand how humans fought when they had nothing left to lose. In a hidden tunnel beneath a fuel processing plant, Juno and her team watched stolen Thalzari footage of the Vendrax broadcast. Her message had looped in every system it reached. "We are the species you enslaved. We're the world you thought broken. But we learned. We listened. We adapted. And now we hunt." Around her, tired men and women nodded in grim silence. They weren't soldiers. They were miners, medics, smugglers. And they were winning. Far above, in the golden towers of the Thalzari Imperial Court, confusion turned to concern. "They die," one high strategos murmured, "but they return fiercer. They sabotage with precision. They evolve," another answered. "They behave like nothing we've conquered." The first paused, watching the flames of a sabotaged fleet yard flicker across the stars. "No," he said quietly. "They behave like us. Before we became gods, we shattered their thrones." The Thalzari still ruled hundreds of systems, but the fear had begun. Starports reported ghost fleets, human vessels blinking in from impossible vectors, striking without warning, then vanishing into gravity rifts too dangerous for most empires to dare. Their ships bore no markings. Their weapons defied logic. Their tactics? Pure chaos. And still, the laughter was gone. Above the core world of Varnax Prime, capital of the Empire, the silent armada arrived. 7 Earth-designed warships emerged from cloaked orbit behind the gas giant Thrus. Their hulls were black, shaped by function, not elegance. No flags, no warnings, just silence and death. Inside the bridge of the lead vessel, Hades 1, Commander Juno Reyes stood at attention. She wore no medals. No commander's robe, just armor reinforced by the bones of fallen comrades. "Target confirmed," her weapons officer said. "The throne ship is in low orbit, scanning for vulnerabilities." Obsidian, the AI, spoke next. "Recommend breaching aft command chamber. Psychic shielding minimal. Thalzari command presence. 3 nobles, 20 guards. High Executor Velshar among them." Juno didn't smile. She didn't need to. "Deploy strike team," she said. "No speeches. No survivors." The boarding pod slammed into the side of the Imperial throne ship, a monstrosity carved from the bones of Dead Star and ringed with glowing relics from conquered worlds. It had never been breached, not in 1,000 years. Until now, Juno's team blasted through silver corridors, gunning down guards with reverse-engineered plasma coils. One noble tried to stop them with psionic fury. She screamed, until Juno shot her mid-thought. They reached the central throne chamber, an obsidian dome pulsing with violet light. High Executor Velshar stood before them in flowing gold, his eyes narrow with hatred and disbelief. "You are apes with stolen toys," he snarled. "We brought you to the stars. We gave your species meaning." Juno raised her rifle. "You gave us cages. You are nothing." She took a step forward. "Then how did we get here?" Velshar surged forward, cloaked in a psionic storm. Juno met it with an anti-thought field, Earth tech disguised as a slave collar. The storm collapsed. He fell to his knees, gasping. "You can't win," he coughed. Juno knelt beside him. "We already did. You just don't know it yet." She placed a charge beneath the throne, carved from the core of a sun humanity once dreamed of visiting. Then she turned to her camera crew. The signal was already broadcasting through stolen relays. "To the galaxy," she said. "You watched us kneel. Now watch them fall." The explosion shattered the throne. The transmission reached every system once under Thalzari control. Across the stars, enslaved species stood taller. Governors fled. Armadas hesitated. The spell of empire broke, not just from force, but from the sight of a throne reduced to dust. And above Varnak's prime, the silent armada disappeared into the void once more. What remains after fire? The war ended not with a treaty, but with silence. The Thalzari Empire, once the eternal rulers of the stars, fractured like brittle glass. With their capital in ruins and their nobles dead or fled, systems once bound in fear simply stopped obeying. The chains of loyalty, held together by myth and terror, crumbled under the weight of reality. And everywhere the myth had ruled, Earth's voice now echoed. Across the former slave worlds, banners bearing the human sigil, two broken chains in orbit around a rising sun, were hoisted. Not as a symbol of conquest, but of defiance, unity, and the right to choose one's future. Juno Reyes stood atop the old council spire on Earth, now rebuilt with stone from shattered Thalzari monuments. Wind rolled across the plains. Grass had returned to places once scorched. Cities hummed with life again, not under watchtowers, but beneath skies finally free. Behind her, 100 alien leaders from newly freed worlds gathered for the first galactic conclave. Not an empire, not another hierarchy. A circle, equal seats, equal voices. A young envoy from the Korean Confederacy approached her, feathers ruffled, voice uncertain. Your people have every right to rule now. Why share it? Juno looked out toward the horizon. Because we know what happens when one voice controls the stars. She turned. We don't want thrones. We want the galaxy to stop needing them. Later that night, as the conclave debated trade and defense, Juno slipped away. She walked through the outskirts of New Cordoba, once a ruined Earth city, now thriving. Children played with drones in the street. Music echoed through steel and glass homes. She paused at a small fire pit where an old man sat carving wood. He looked up, squinting. Commander Reyes? Juno smiled faintly. Not anymore. He gestured to the seat beside him. Used to be a soldier myself. First wave that tried to stop the Empire when they came. We weren't ready. They laughed at us. Juno nodded. They did. The man whittled in silence, then asked softly, was it worth it? What we lost to get here. Juno looked at the stars. They took everything from us. But in doing so, they revealed what we really are. He chuckled. Which is? Relentless. A small girl ran over then, carrying a glowing toy starship. She tugged at the old man's sleeve. Grandpa, is it true? The aliens laughed at Earth. He nodded. They did. She frowned. And what did we do? The old man glanced at Juno. She didn't speak. He smiled and answered, we stopped being funny. The stars above twinkled, no longer out of reach, no longer ruled by others. They belonged to everyone now, because Earth remembered, and Earth endured.